Please like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to ring that notification bell. Thank you. The accused is back in Idaho at the Latah County Jail, and I have the arraignment here for you guys to watch. If you've already seen it, you can watch it again, or you can fast forward it past the hearing. But there was a lot of shocking news that came out yesterday through the probable cause affidavit, and it took me a while to gather my thoughts and figure out how to make this video and what to talk about exactly, as there was so many things that were not what so many people expected. We've all been looking for certain things throughout this case, and with the news that came out yesterday, it kind of was 180 to a lot of the things that we knew. So I'm going to present all of that, the entire affidavit, after this hearing, and stick with me.
Yeah, I need two chairs. Preferably the blue kind. Oh, we got it. We took care of it. Yep. Yes. Okay. All right.
Please be seated. We're on the record in the Second Judicial District, Latah County. This is the Magistrate's Division of District Court. This is State of Idaho versus Bryan C. Kohlberger, cause number CR 29222805. Mr. Kohlberger is present in court. He is in custody. He is appearing with his attorney, Ms. Taylor, Mr. Thompson, Ms. Jennings, on behalf of the state. This is the time set in the matter for initial appearance. Mr. Kohlberger, I am going to advise you of the rights that you have in this case. I am going to go over the criminal complaint with you, and then we're going to discuss setting the matter for further hearing. You have the following rights. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. You have the right to the presumption of innocence. That means the state bears the burden to prove that you are guilty of this offense beyond a reasonable doubt. You have the right to a preliminary hearing. A preliminary hearing is a probable cause hearing. At that hearing, the state must establish that more likely than not, these felony offenses were committed and you were the one that committed the felony offenses. You have a right to have that hearing within 14 days if you remain in custody. If you are bound over at that preliminary hearing to district court, if the court finds probable cause, you would be bound over to district court. And at that time, you can enter a plea of not guilty, and you can have a jury trial set within 6 months of your appearance in district court. At both your preliminary hearing and your jury trial, you have the right to confront and question any evidence or witnesses called against you. Call witnesses on your own behalf, and compel witnesses to be present and testify at the state's expense. You have the right to be represented by a lawyer. If you cannot afford one could be appointed to represent you based upon your financial need. You also have the right to appeal any conviction in your case. Do you understand these rights?
Yes.
I am now going to go over the criminal complaint with you. Count 1 of the criminal complaint charges you with the felony offense of burglary. It alleges that the defendant, Bryan C. Kohlberger, on or about November 13th of 2022 in Latah County, State of Idaho, did unlawfully enter a residence located at 1122 King Road, Moscow, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder in violation of Idaho Code 18-1401 and 1403. The maximum penalty for that offense, if you plead guilty or are found guilty, is not less than 1 year in prison, no more than 10 years in prison, and or a $50,000 fine or both. Do you understand?
Yes.
Count 2 alleges that you committed the felony offense of murder in the first degree. It alleges that the defendant, Brian C. Kohberger, on or about November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice aforethought, kill and murder Madison Mogan, a human being, by stabbing Madison Mogan, from which she died, in violation of Idaho Code 18-4001, 4002, 4003, and 4004. The maximum penalty for this offense, if you were to plead guilty or be found guilty, is death or imprisonment for life. Do you understand?
Yes.
Count 3 alleges that you committed the felony offense of murder in the first degree. It alleges that the defendant, Brian C. Kohberger, on or about November 13th of 2022 in Latah County, state of Idaho, did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice aforethought, kill and murder Kaylee Gonsalves, a human being, by stabbing Kaylee Gonsalves, from which she died, in violation of Idaho Code 18-4001, 4002, 4003, 4004. Again, the maximum penalty for that offense, if you plead guilty or are found guilty, is death and/or imprisonment for life. Do you understand?
Yes.
Count 4 alleges that you committed the felony offense of murder in the first degree. It alleges that the defendant, Brian C. Kohberger, on or about November 13th of 2022 in Latah County, Idaho, did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice aforethought, kill and murder Xana Kernodle, a human being, by stabbing Xana Kernodle, from which she died, in violation of Idaho Code 18-4001, 4002, 4003, and 4004. Again, the maximum penalty for that offense, if you plead guilty or are found guilty, is up to death and/or imprisonment for life. Do you understand?
Yes.
Count 5 alleges that you committed the felony offense of murder in the first degree. It alleges that the defendant, Brian C. Kohberger, on or about November 13th of 2022 in Latah County, state of Idaho, did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice aforethought, kill and murder Ethan Chapin, a human being, by stabbing Ethan Chapin, from which he died, in violation of Idaho Codes 18-4001, 4002, 4003, and 4004. And again, the maximum penalty for this offense, if you plead guilty or are found guilty, is up to death and imprisonment for life. Do you understand?
Yes.
And Mr. Kohberger, would you like to represent yourself, hire a lawyer, or see if you qualify for court-appointed counsel?
I have court-appointed counsel.
Court has reviewed your application for attorney at public expense. I do find that you are indigent and do qualify for court-appointed counsel. I will appoint Ms. Taylor to represent you in this case. Ms. Taylor, have you had an opportunity to speak with Mr. Kohberger about speedy preliminary hearing and setting this matter?
Your Honor, I have. We would ask the court to set a status hearing in a week or two to make a final determination.
Okay. And Mr. Thompson, Ms. Jennings, are you in agreement with that?
That's
Ms. Taylor, have you had an opportunity to speak with Mr. Kohberger about speedy preliminary hearing and setting this matter?
Your Honor, I have. We would ask the court to set a status hearing in a week or two to make a final determination.
Okay. And Mr. Thompson, Ms. Jennings, are you in agreement with that?
That's fine with the state, Your Honor.
I will go ahead and set this matter for a status hearing then on the calendar on January 12th at 10 o'clock a.m. We will make sure notice is sent, and then Ms. Taylor, do you wish to argue bail at this time?
Your Honor, I would like to ask the court to consider setting a bond. Mr. Kohberger right now is on a no bond hold, but it's a limited request as I don't have enough information. We are new to the case. We haven't reviewed very much in the way of information about the case, and we have just begun our own work on the case. But we would want the court to know that Mr. Kohberger has a good family that stands behind him.
And Mr. Thompson?
The state's position is that Mr. Kohberger is not entitled to bond in this case. We can take charges, as is noted on the arrest warrant itself. Idaho Code 19-816, 19-2903 both specify that given the potential penalties in this case, there's no right to bail. The defendant was arrested 3,000 miles away across the country, where his family is. We ask that he remain in custody. No bail.
At this point in time, pursuant to Idaho Criminal Law 46B and Idaho Code 19-816 and 2903, I am going to leave the bail set of this case as no bail at this point in time until I have additional or further information at a later date and time. So with that, then Mr. Kohberger, you will be remanded in custody and remain in custody on the no bail pending further proceedings in this matter. Is there anything further in the case then for today, Mr. Thompson?
Yes, Your Honor. The state is asking for no contact orders for various family members of the deceased and also for the surviving roommates. I've spoken briefly with Ms. Taylor. She indicated there's no objection.
Ms. Taylor, is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
So I will go ahead and issue those no contact orders. So I do have a no contact order then for the named individual of Dylan Mortensen, Bethany Funk, as well as the family members and Mr. Chapin, the family members of Ms. Pernodal, excuse me, yes, Mr. and Ms. Laramie, Mr. Mogan, Ms. Cheeley, and then a number of members of the Gonsalves family. Those specific names will certainly be provided to you, Mr. Kohberger, by way of being provided notice of these documents. You'll get a copy of these no contact orders. What you do need to be advised of and what will be in this no contact order is you are prohibited from having any contact with them whatsoever. You cannot contact them through third person in writing or by any electronic means. You cannot Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram, use the phone to communicate with them or otherwise any form of communication in direct or indirectly with them. You cannot engage in any conduct that would harass, stalk, threaten, use, attempt to use, or threaten to use any physical force or violence upon them, or place them in reasonable fear of bodily injury. Cannot go within or knowingly remain within 300 feet of their person or their home, workplace, or any other place where they might be. There are no exceptions to these orders. And if you do violate these orders, it is a new misdemeanor offense. It is punishable by up to a year in jail and or a $1,000 fine or both. At this point in time, due to being in the magistrate's division here, at this juncture, I am going to issue the no contact orders for a period of 2 years. And then if it needs to be modified or changed by additional judge, it can be done so at that time. Is there anything further, Mr. Thompson?
No, Your Honor.
Anything further, Ms. Taylor?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. We are adjourned.
So there we have it. That was the entire hearing, and we're going to move into this affidavit. Page 1. This is a redacted copy. Page 1. The below information is provided by Brett Payne, who is duly appointed, qualified, and acting peace officer within the county of Latah, state of Idaho. Brett Payne is employed by Moscow Police Department in the official capacity or position of corporal and has been trained and qualified peace officer for approximately 4 years. Corporal Payne is being assigned by members of the Idaho State Police and agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. On November 13th, 2022, at approximately 4:00 p.m., Moscow Police Department Sergeant Baker and I responded to 1122 King Road, Moscow, Idaho, hereafter the King Road residence, to assist with scene security and processing of a crime scene associated with 4 homicides. Upon our arrival, the Idaho State Police forensic team was on scene and was preparing to begin processing the scene. MPD Officer Smith, one of the initial responding officers to the incident, advised he would walk me through the scene. Officer Smith and I entered the King Road residence through the bottom floor door on the north side of the building. Officer Smith and I then walked upstairs to the second floor. Officer Smith directed me down a hallway to the west bedroom on the second floor, which I later learned through Xana's driver's license and other personal belongings found in the room was Xana Kernodle's, hereafter Kernodle's, room. Just before this room there was a bathroom door on the south wall of the hallway. As I approached the room, I could see a body, later identified as Kernodle's, laying on the floor. Kernodle was deceased with wounds which appeared to have been caused by an edged weapon. Also in the room was a male, later identified as Ethan Chapin, hereafter Chapin. Chapin was also deceased with wounds later determined, and it says in parentheses, autopsy report provided by the Spokane Medical Examiner. So the injuries to be caused by sharp force injuries. I then followed Officer Smith upstairs to the third floor of the residence. The third floor consisted of 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. The bedroom on the west side of the floor was later determined to be Kaylee Gonsalves, hereafter Gonsalves' room. I later learned from the review of the officer's body camera there was a dog in the room when Moscow police officers initially responded. The dog belonged to Gonsalves and her ex-boyfriend Jack Decor. I found out from my interview with Jack Decor on November 13th that he and Gonsalves shared the dog. Officer Smith then pointed out a small bathroom on the east side of the third floor. This bathroom shared a wall with Madison Mogan's, hereafter Mogan's, bedroom, which was situated on the southeast corner of the third floor. As I entered the room, I could see 2 females in a single bed in the room. Both Gonsalves and Mogan were deceased with visible stab wounds. I also later noticed what appeared to be a tan leather knife sheath laying on the bed next to Mogan's right side when viewed from the door. The sheath was later processed as had K-Bar, USMC, and the United States Marine Corps Eagle Globe and Anchor insignia stamped on the outside of it. The Idaho State Lab later located a single source of male DNA suspect profile that was left on the bottom snap of the knife sheath. As part of the investigation, numerous interviews were conducted by MPD officers, Idaho State Police, and FBI agents. 2 of the interviews included BF and DM, which is Brittany and Dylan, the roommates. Both of them were inside the King Road residence at the time of the homicides and were roommates to the victims. BF's bedroom was located on the east side of the first floor of the King Road residence, and we now know that Dylan was on that second floor. Based on numerous interviews conducted by MPD officers, ISP detectives, FBI agents, as well as my review of evidence, I have learned the following. On the evening of November the 12th, Chapin and Kernodle are seen by Brittany at the Sigma Chi house on the University of Idaho's campus at 735 Nez Perce Drive from approximately 9 p.m. on November 12th to 1:45 a.m. On November 13th, Brittany also stated that at approximately 1:45, Chapin and Kernodle returned to the King Road residence. Brittany also stated that Chapin did not live in the King Road residence but was a guest of Kernodle. Gonsalves and Mogan were at a local bar, the Corner Club, at 202 North Main Street in Moscow. Gonsalves and Mogan had been seen on video footage provided by the Corner Club. They were there between 10 p.m. on the 12th to 1:30 a.m. on the 13th. At approximately 1:30 a.m., Gonsalves and Mogan can be seen on video at the local food vendor called the Grub Truck at 318 South Main Street in downtown Moscow. The Grub Truck live streams video from their food truck on the streaming platform Twitch, which is available for public viewing on their website. The video was captured by law enforcement. A private party, and it's redacted, reported that he provided a ride to Gonsalves and Mogan at approximately 1:56 a.m. from downtown Moscow in front of the Grub Truck to the King Road residence. DM and BF both made statements during interviews that indicated the occupants of the King Road residence were at home by 2 a.m. and asleep, or at least in their rooms by approximately 4 a.m. This is with the exception of Kernodle, who received a DoorDash order at the residence at approximately 4 a.m. Law enforcement identified the DoorDash delivery driver who reported this information. DM stated she originally went to sleep in her bedroom on the southeast side of the second floor. DM stated she was awoken at approximately 4 a.m. by what she stated sounded like Gonsalves playing with her dog in one of the upstairs bedrooms, which was located on the third floor. A short time later, DM said that she heard who she thought was Gonsalves say something to the effect of, "There's someone here." A review of the records obtained from a forensic download of Kernodle's phone showed this could have been Kernodle, as her cellular phone indicated she was likely awake and using TikTok app at approximately 4:12. DM stated that she looked out of her room but did not see anything when she heard the comment about someone being in the house. DM stated she opened her door a second time when she heard what she thought was crying from Kernodle's room. DM then said she heard a male voice saying something to the effect of, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." At approximately 4:17 a.m., a security camera located at 1112 King Road, a residence immediately to the northwest of 1122 King, picked up distorted audio of what sounded like voices or a whimper followed by a loud thud. A dog can also be heard barking numerous times starting at 4:17. The camera is less than 50 feet from the west wall of Kernodle's bedroom. DM stated she opened her door for the third time after she heard crying and saw a figure clad in black clothing and a mask that covered the person's mouth and nose walking toward her. DM described the figure as 5'10" or taller, male, not very muscular, but athletically built with bushy eyebrows. The male walked past DM as she stood in a frozen shock phase. The male walked towards the back sliding glass door. DM locked herself in her room. During the processing of the crime scene, investigators found a latent shoe print. This was located during the second processing of the crime scene by the ISP forensic team by first using a presumptive blood test and then amino black, a protein stain that detects the presence of cellular material. Here's a good description. So amino black is a protein staining reagent that is commonly used for the enhancement and visualization of suspected blood stain patterned evidence. The detected shoe print showed a diamond-shaped pattern similar to the pattern of a Vans-type shoe sole just outside the door of DM's bedroom, located on the second floor. This is consistent with DM's statement regarding the suspect's path of travel. As part of the investigation, an extensive search, commonly referred to in law enforcement as a video canvass, was conducted in the area of the King Road residence. This video canvass was to obtain any footage from the early morning hours of November the 13th in the area of the King Road residence and surrounding neighborhoods in an effort to locate the suspect or suspect vehicle traveling to or leaving from the King Road residence. This video canvass resulted in the collection of numerous surveillance videos in the area from both residential and business addresses. I have reviewed numerous videos that were collected and have had conversations with other MPD officers, ISP detectives, and FBI agents that are similarly reviewing footage that was obtained. A review of camera footage indicated that a white sedan, hereafter noted as Suspect Vehicle 1, was observed traveling westbound on the 700 block of Indian Hills Drive in Moscow. A review of footage from multiple videos obtained from the King Road neighborhood showed multiple sightings of Suspect Vehicle 1 starting at 3:29 a.m. and ending at 4:20 a.m. These sightings show Suspect Vehicle 1 make an initial 3 passes by the 1122 King Road residence and then leave via Walenta Drive. Based off my experience as a patrol officer, this is a residential neighborhood with a very limited number of vehicles that travel in the area during the early morning hours. Upon review of the video, there are only a few cars that enter and exit this area during this time frame. Suspect Vehicle 1 can be seen entering the area a 4th time at approximately 4:04 a.m. It can be seen driving eastbound on King Road, stopping and turning around in front of 500 Queen Road, number 52, then driving westbound on King. When the Suspect Vehicle 1 is in front of the King Road residence, it appears to unsuccessfully attempt to park or turn around in the road. The vehicle then continued to the intersection of Queen and King Road, where it can be seen completing a 3-point turn and then driving eastbound again down Queen Road. Suspect Vehicle 1 is seen departing the area of King Road at 4:20 a.m. at a high rate of speed. Suspect Vehicle 1 is now seen traveling southbound on Walenta Drive. Based on my knowledge of the area and review of camera footage in the neighborhood, that does not show Suspect Vehicle 1 during that time frame. I believe Suspect Vehicle 1 likely exited the neighborhood at Palouse River Drive and Conestoga Drive. Palouse River Drive is at the southern edge of Moscow and proceeds into Whitman County, Washington. Eventually, the road leads to Pullman, Washington. Pullman, Washington is about 10 miles from Moscow, Idaho. Both Pullman and Moscow are small college towns, and people commonly travel back and forth between them. Law enforcement officers provided video footage of Suspect Vehicle 1 to forensic examiners with the Federal Bureau of Investigation that regularly utilize surveillance footage to identify the year, make, and model of an unknown vehicle that is observed by one or more cameras during the commission of a criminal offense. The forensic examiner had approximately 35 years of law enforcement experience and 12 years at the FBI. His specific training includes identifying unique characteristics of vehicles, and he uses a database that gives visual clues of vehicles across states to identify differences between vehicles. After reviewing the numerous observations of the Suspect Vehicle 1, the forensic examiner initially believed the Suspect Vehicle 1 was a 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra. Upon further review, he indicated that it could also be a 2011 to 2016 Hyundai Elantra. As a result, investigators have been reviewing information on persons in possession of a vehicle that is between a 2011 and 2016 white Hyundai Elantra. Now, we will get back into that again after the affidavit. Investigators were given access to video footage on the Washington State University WSU campus, located in Pullman, Washington. A review of that video footage indicated that approximately at 2:44 on November 13th, a white sedan, which was consistent with the description of the white Elantra as suspect vehicle 1, was observed on WSU surveillance cameras. Traveling north on Southeast Nevada Street at Northeast Stadium Way at approximately 2:53 a.m. A white sedan, which was consistent with the description of the white Elantra known as suspect vehicle 1, was observed traveling southeast on Nevada Street in Pullman, Washington, towards State Route 270. 270 connects Pullman, Washington to Moscow, Idaho. The footage in Pullman, Washington was provided to the same FBI forensic examiner, and the forensic examiner identified the vehicle observed in Pullman, Washington as being a 2014 to 2016 Hyundai Elantra. At approximately 5:25 a.m., a white sedan, which was consistent with the description of suspect vehicle 1, was observed on 5 cameras in Pullman, Washington, and on WSU campus cameras. The first camera that recorded the white sedan was located at 1300 Johnson Road in Pullman. This white sedan was observed traveling northbound on Johnson Road. Johnson Road leads directly back to West Palouse River Drive in Moscow, which intersects with Conestoga Drive. The white sedan was then observed traveling north on Bishop Boulevard and northwest on State Route 270 at approximately 5:27 a.m. The white Elantra was observed on cameras traveling northbound on Stadium Way at Nevada Street, Stadium Way at Grimes Way, Stadium Drive at Wilson Road, and Stadium Way at Cougar Way. They do show a map on the affidavit, but it's really hard to see. On November 25th, 2022, MPD asked area law enforcement agencies to be on the lookout for a white Hyundai Elantras in the area. On November 29th at approximately 12:28 a.m., WSU police officer Daniel Tiango queried what white Elantras registered at Wazoo, and as a result of that query, he located a 2015 white Elantra with a Pennsylvania license plate LFZ 8649. This vehicle was registered to Bryan Kohlberger, hereafter known as Kohberger, residing at 1630 Northeast Valley Road, apartment 201 in Pullman, Washington. That address is approximately 3/4 of a mile from the intersection of Stadium Way and Cougar Way, last camera location that picked up the white Elantra. That same day at 12:58 a.m., Wazoo officer Chris Whittam was looking for white Hyundai Elantras and located a 2015 white Elantra at the 1630 Northeast Valley Road in Pullman in the parking lot. That address houses students. Officer Whitman also ran the car and it returned to Kohberger with a Washington tag. I reviewed Kohberger's Washington State driver's license information and photograph. This license indicates that Kohberger is a white male with a height of 6 feet and weighs 185 pounds. Additionally, the photograph of Kohberger showed that he had bushy eyebrows. Kohberger's physical description is consistent with the description of the male DM saw inside the King Road residence on November 13th. Further investigation, including a review of the Latah County Sheriff's Deputy Corporal Duke's body cam and reports, showed that on August 21st, 2022, Bryan Kohberger was detained as part of a traffic stop that occurred in Moscow, Idaho by Corporal Duke. At the time, Kohberger, who was the sole occupant, was driving a white 2015 Hyundai Elantra with the Pennsylvania plate LFZ 8649, which was set to expire on November 30th, 2022. During the stop, which was recorded via a law enforcement body camera, Kohberger provided his phone number as, and they redacted it, ending in 8458, hereafter known as the 8458 phone, as his cellular phone number, Investigators conducted electronic database queries and learned that the 8458 phone is a number issued by AT&T. On October 14th, 2022, Bryan Kohlberger was detained as part of a traffic stop by WSU police officer. Upon review of that body cam and report of the stop, Kohlberger was the sole occupant and was driving a white 2015 white Elantra with Pennsylvania plate LFZ 8649. On November 18th, according to Washington State Licensing, Kohlberger registered the 2015 white Elantra with Washington and later received Washington plate CFB 8708. Prior to this time, the 2015 Elantra was registered in Pennsylvania, which does not require a front license plate to be displayed. Then it says in parentheses, this was learned through communications with the Pennsylvania officer who is currently certified in the state of Pennsylvania. Based on my own experience in communication with Washington law enforcement, I know Idaho and Washington require front and back license plates to be displayed. Investigators believe that Kohlberger is still driving the 2015 white Elantra at this time because the vehicle was captured on December 13th by a license plate reader in Loma, Colorado. Information was provided by a query to a database. Kohlberger's Elantra was then queried on December 15th by law enforcement in Hancock County, Indiana, and on December 16th at 2:26 p.m., surveillance video showed Kohlberger's Elantra in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. The sole occupant of the vehicle was a white male whose description was consistent with Kohlberger. Kohlberger has family in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, learned through a TLO search and locate tool database query. Based on information provided by the WSU website, Kohlberger is currently a PhD student in criminology at Washington State University. Pursuant to records provided by a member of the interview panel for Pullman Police Department, we learned that Kohlberger's past education included undergraduate degrees in psychology and cloud-based forensics. These records also show Kohlberger wrote an essay when he applied for an internship with the Pullman Police Department in the fall of 2022. Kohlberger wrote in his essay that he had an interest in assisting rural law enforcement agencies with how to better collect and analyze technological data in public safety operations. Kohlberger also posted a Reddit survey which can be found by an open source internet search. The survey asked for participants to provide information to understand how emotions and psychological traits influence decision making when committing a crime. As part of the investigation, law enforcement obtained search warrants to determine cellular devices that utilize cellular towers in close proximity to the King Road residence on November 13th between 3 o'clock a.m. and 5 o'clock a.m. After determining that Kohlberger was associated to both the 2015 Elantra and the 8458 phone in those returns, they did not show that the 8458 phone utilizing cellular tower resources in close proximity to the King Road residence between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. on November the 13th. Based on my training, experience, and conversations with law enforcement officers that specialize in the utilization of cellular telephone records, as part of investigations, individuals can either leave their cellular telephone at a different location before committing a crime or turn their cellular telephone off prior to going to a location to commit a crime. This is done by subjects in an effort to avoid alerting law enforcement that a cellular device associated with them was in the particular area where the crime is being committed. I also know that on numerous occasions, subjects will surveil an area where they intend to commit a crime prior to the date of the crime. Depending on the circumstances, this could be done a few days before or for several months prior to the commission of a crime. During these types of surveillance, it is possible that an individual would not leave their cellular telephone at a separate location or turn it off, since they do not plan to commit the offense on that particular day. The officer applied on December 23rd for a search warrant on the historical phone records between November 12th, 2022 and November 14th for the 8458 phone held by AT&T. And on December 23rd, he did receive those records, and they indicated that the 8458 phone is subscribed to Bryan Kohlberger at an address in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, and the account has been open since June. After this information was received, he consulted with an FBI special agent that's certified as a member of Cellular Analysis Survey Team, also known as CAST. Members of CAST are certified with the FBI to provide expert testimony in the field of historical CSLI and are required to pass extensive training that includes both written and practical examinations prior to being certified with CAST, as well as the completion of yearly certification requirements. He states the officers he consulted with had over 15 years of federal law enforcement experience, which includes 6 years with the FBI. From information provided by CAST, he was able to determine estimated locations for the 8458 phone from November the 12th, 2022 to November the 13th, 2022, the time period authorized by the court. On November 13th, at approximately 2:42 a.m., the 8458 phone was utilizing cellular resources that provide coverage to 1630 Northeast Valley Road, apartment G201 in Pullman. So at 2:42 on the 13th, he was home. They write hereafter, also known as the Kohlberger residence. At approximately 2:47, the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources that provided coverage southeast of the Kohlberger residence, consistent with the 8458 phone leaving the residence and traveling south through Pullman, Washington. This is consistent with the movements of the white Elantra. At approximately 2:47 a.m., the 8458 phone stops reporting to the network, which is consistent with either the phone being in an area without cellular coverage, the connection of the network is disabled, such as putting the phone in airplane mode, or that the phone is turned off. The 8458 phone does not report back to the network again until approximately 4:48 in the morning, at which time they utilize cellular resources that provide coverage to Idaho State Highway 95 south of Moscow near Blaine, Idaho, which is north of Genesee, between 4:50 a.m. and 5:26 a.m. The phone utilizes cellular resources that are consistent with the 8458 phone traveling south on Idaho State Highway 95 to Genesee, Idaho, then traveling west toward Uniontown, Idaho, and then north back up into Pullman, Washington. At approximately 5:30 a.m., the 8458 phone is utilizing resources that provide coverage to Pullman, Washington, and consistent with the phone traveling back to the Kohlberger residence. The 8458 phone movements are consistent with the movements of the white Elantra that is observed traveling north on Stadium Drive at 5:27, and based on review of the 8458 phone's estimated locations and travel, the 8458 phone's travel is consistent with that of the white Elantra. So the cell phone and the video are matching up and coinciding. Further review indicated that an 8458 phone utilized cellular resources on November 13, 2022 that are consistent with the phone leaving the area of the Kohlberger residence at approximately 9 a.m. in Washington and traveling to Moscow, Idaho. Specifically, the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources that would provide coverage to the King Road residences between 9:12 a.m. and 9:21 a.m. So that's after the murders, 9 o'clock in the morning. And the 8458 phone Next, utilize cellular resources that are consistent with the phone traveling back to the area of the Kohberger residences and arriving to the area at approximately 9:32. So he made a quick run back to Moscow and then back home. Investigators found that the 8458 phone did not connect to a cell phone tower that provided service to Moscow on the 14th, and they do not believe that he was in Moscow at all on November the 14th. Based on my training experience and the facts of the investigation thus far, I believe that Kohberger, the owner of the 8458 phone, was likely the driver of the white Elantra that is observed departing Pullman, Washington, and that this vehicle is likely suspect vehicle 1. Additionally, the route of travel of the 8458 phone during the early morning hours of November 13th and the lack of the 8458 phone reporting to AT&T between 2:47 and 4:48 is consistent with Kohberger attempting to conceal his location during the quadruple homicide that occurred at the King Road residences. The next page, page 16, talks about on December 23rd, he was granted a search warrant, which they applied for historical data from June 23rd, 2022, through pen registered trap trace on the phone, and to determine if Kohberger stalked any of the victims in the case prior to the offense. So on December 23rd, pursuant to that search warrant, he received the records from AT&T, and after consulting with CAST, he was able to determine estimated locations for the 8458 phone from June 22nd to present, the time period authorized by the court. The records for the 8458 phone show the 8458 phone utilizing cellular resources that provide coverage to the area of the 1122 King Road on at least 12 occasions prior to November 13th, 2022. All of the occasions except for one occurred in the late evening and early morning hours of their respective dates. One of these occasions, on August 21st, 2022, the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources providing coverage to the King Road residence from approximately 10:34 p.m. to 11:35 p.m., so 1 hour. At approximately 11:37 p.m., Kohberger was stopped by Latah County Sheriff Deputy Corporal Duke, as mentioned above. The 8548 phone was utilizing cellular resources consistent with the location of the traffic stop during this time, the one that was at Farm Road and Pullman Highway. Further analysis of the cellular data provided showed that the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources on November 13th, consistent with the phone traveling from Pullman, Washington to Lewiston, Idaho via U.S. Highway 195. At approximately 12:36 p.m., the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources that would provide coverage to Kate's Cup of Joe coffee stand located at 810 Port Drive in Clarkston, Washington. Surveillance footage from the U.S. Chef store located at 820 Port Drive in Clarkston, Washington, and adjacent to Kate's Cup of Joe showed a white Elantra consistent with the suspect vehicle 1. That car drove past Kate's Cup of Joe at a time consistent with the cellular data from the 8548 phone. At 12:46 p.m., the phone then utilized cellular data in the area of an Albertsons grocery store at 400 Bridge Street in Clarkston, Washington. Surveillance footage obtained from the Albertsons showed Kohberger exit the white Elantra, consistent with the suspect vehicle 1, at approximately 12:49. Interior surveillance cameras showed Kohberger walk through the store, purchase unknown items at the checkout, and leave at approximately 1:04. Kohberger's possible path of travel was depicted below, and it's on paper, so it's really hard to read. Additional analysis of the records of the 8458 phone indicated that between 5:32 p.m. and 5:36 p.m., the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources that provided coverage in Johnson, Idaho. The 8458 phone then stops reporting to the network from 5:36 to 8:30 p.m. That is consistent with the 8458 phone being in the area that is the same area that the phone traveled in the hours immediately following the suspected time that the homicides occurred. Okay, so that was confusing. I don't understand this part. Additional analysis of the phone records for the 8458 phone indicated that between approximately 5:32 and 5:36, the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources that provide coverage to Johnson, Idaho. Okay, so I understand that the night of the murders or evening, 5:32 and 5:36, the phone is pinging in Johnson, Idaho, right? Okay, so then it says the 8458 phone then stops reporting to the network from approximately 5:36 p.m., which was that last ping, to 8:30 p.m., so that's 3 hours. And then it says that is consistent with the 8458 phone being the area that the 8458 phone traveled in the hours immediately following the suspected time the homicides occurred. Now that statement, I don't get it, because that's like saying then that the phone wasn't turned off from 2:40 whatever to 5 o'clock in the morning or whatever time it was. That's like saying that the phone could have been in that area. So I'm a little confused by that. That would be contradictory and not help the case. If you can help me understand that part better, by all means, please comment. On December 27th, 2022, Pennsylvania agents recovered the trash from the Kohberger family residence located in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. That evidence was sent to the Idaho State Lab for testing. On December 28, 2022, the Idaho State Lab reported that a DNA profile obtained from the trash and the DNA profile obtained from the sheath identified a male as not being excluded as the biological father of suspect profile. So it was basically saying that the paternity in the garbage was a father of the suspect profile of DNA that they had. So it said at least 99.9998% of the male population would be expected to be excluded from the possibility of being the suspect's biological father. So it basically connected his dad to him. And based on the above information, I am requesting an arrest warrant be issued for Bryan C. Kohberger, date of birth November 21st, 1994, for the burglary at 1122 King Street in Moscow, Idaho, and 4 counts of murder in the first degree for the murders of Madison Mogan, Kaylee Gonzalez, Santa Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. I declare under penalty of perjury pursuant to the law of the state of Idaho that the foregoing is true and correct. And that was dated 12/29/2022 and signed. That was a lot, everybody. I've taken you through the whole 18 pages of the affidavit, broke it down, and tried to attach visuals to it to help people understand, as it can be really overwhelming to read if you're not used to reading these kinds of documents, as most people are not. Anyway, now let's discuss the things that are bothering everyone. Social media has blown up over the news of the roommate seeing Mr. Kohberger, in a mask in the house, walking past her, and her not calling 911. That has caused some outrage. Other people are saying, she was in shock. She wasn't in her right frame of mind. And I wasn't there. I cannot speak to her frame of mind. Had she been drinking? Had she been under the influence of anything? If she was in shock, what else she saw? I don't know. So I can't say anything really to that. I mean, Yeah, initially I was upset, like, who does that? 7 hours later and no one called 911. I don't know. Did she pass out and not go to sleep? I don't know what happened to her. So I guess we'll have to wait to hear the evidence on that. Um, more commonly speaking, you usually go into fight or flight mode when confronted with fear. And I mean, I've been scared before. I don't know if any of you guys have been in a situation where someone's following you or you're really scared, but unfortunately I have. And usually you try to be as quiet as you can, but I just can't see myself going to sleep. That would definitely, for me, not be an option. And I don't know if her cell phone was in the room or not. But I guess, like I said, we're just going to have to wait to find out. Though a lot of people feel that this looks damning, and it does in some ways look pretty damning. They did excellent surveillance on this vehicle, I will say that. The timeline is really tight. I mean, really tight. And a lot of people are saying that he must have been in the house. And the police are stating that he acted alone. But this is tight. And I want to be completely fair and stick to the facts of what we know. So, we know that this car was in the area 328, passed by the house 3 times at 329, was seen on surveillance. Now remember, they say the murders happened between 4 and 4:20, but we're going through it. Bryan Kohberger is turning his car around up the road, like where the back of the house is, in that backyard, at 4:04, right? He heads back down the street and gets to the intersection of Queen and King and makes a 3-point turn after unsuccessfully trying to park at 4:04. Just after 4:04, really. I was even nice. I put it 4:05. I still think it would have taken longer than a minute. Plus, he had to park and then walk right into the house. Could have been 4:06 to 4:10, let's say. Depending on how quick he parked and then went around back into the doors. I don't think he went in the front because DoorDash and him were there around the same time. They may have missed each other, though, by a minute. Looks like he went upstairs first. So based on the location of the knife sheath, it appears that Kaylee and Maddie were the first victims. That also coincides with the dog. She heard what she thought was Kaylee playing with the dog at, I think that was 4 o'clock. So let's say he gets in between 4:06 and 4:10. He goes upstairs and does what he does. He moves the dog into what we now know was Kaylee's room. The dog was locked in that room and did have contact with the perpetrator, it appears. We also know for a fact that at 4:12, Santa was on TikTok. And that was around the time that Dylan hears a cry. Around 4:17, the dog is heard barking. That is a fact because it's picked up from camera next door. There's also a thud heard at that 4:17 mark. She looks out of her room and she doesn't see anybody. But as you can see, you can't really see much from her room but the kitchen. So then she states after that, she saw the assailant coming forward toward her. So was it 4:17 and 30 seconds, 4:18, 4:19? We don't know, but let's just go with 4:18. And then he walks through the kitchen, out the door. He doesn't harm her. We can't know 100% if he saw her, but I would think he would have. He has to walk up that hill, get in his vehicle, turn it on, and go down the road. Walenta Drive by car takes about 2 minutes. Brian Entin did a special where you could park actually on Walenta and walk through the woods out the back. But I think that would actually take a little bit longer, but I'm going to look. Well, I can't manipulate the map to let me do a shortcut around the back. But if we went all the way around, it's showing 8 minutes. So let's cut that at least in half. It could take up to 3 minutes to walk up the hill, through the parking lot, and then up the hill to the other side. So let's go with 2 to 3 minutes. And then get in the car and drive away. So that is an extremely tight time frame. The killer basically had from 4:07 till 4:18, so 11 minutes to kill all 4 people. I just find that close to, impossible. I don't know. I mean, it happened, but that's crazy. So the defense is going to be working on this case very diligently. What do you think? Do you think it's even possible to do that amount of damage on 2 different floors in that short amount of time? Do you think someone else is involved? They state that no one else is involved, but we've gone through a lot of public statements that didn't come to fruition or weren't accurate. So I want to know what you guys think. We also know that Kohberger makes it home by 5:27 in the morning. So there's an hour and a few minutes gap between the time that he leaves the scene until he arrives home. And that trip doesn't take that long. That trip usually only takes 20 minutes. The movements of the vehicle are definitely looking extremely damning. The DNA on the knife sheath is likely skin cells. And, I mean, technically, had he had someone else involved that he dropped off or lived in the area that stole his weapon, perhaps, let's say he had it in the car and they took it and he didn't know, just a hypothetical, and did what they did, and then he picked them up the next day. That's why he was in the area at 9:30. I mean, that's a possibility. It's a very unlikely possibility, but it's physically possible, basically. I don't think that was the case, as we saw the car driving on Walenta behind the house. So it was looking more like it was canvassing, and that is the behavior of a guilty party. I don't know. I just find that time frame extremely tight, and there's a lot of work ahead of everyone. If that timeline is such as it seems, and it's pretty factual, they are going to find a lot of blood inside of that vehicle, because there was no time for him to change, shower, do anything. He would have had to get in the car as he was. Even if he got naked in the street, I don't think he could do that in 2 minutes, and he still would have cross-contaminated himself and his vehicle. So we will have to wait for the rest of the evidence. I will talk about what the defense is going to bring up in terms of inconsistencies, because there was a lot of the statements that were told to the public for help were inconsistent with what we found out now. They're in no obligation to give us their information, but they did, and it's going to be challenged in court. The biggest one that everyone is pointing out is the year model of the Hyundai, which drove everyone crazy because the public was desperately trying to help, and they were so hell-bent on that 2011 to 2013 Elantra, and then they say in the affidavit that they changed it, but they never told us. They never would confirm anything about that car. That's been hard. As well as the coroner's statement about them being asleep and in their bed.
That maybe they were sleeping.
Were they found in separate areas of the house?
That hasn't been disclosed yet.
Can you tell me, when you say that they might have been sleeping, were they found in beds?
Yes.
And so can you tell me if there were multiple stab wounds per victim, or were these sort of, individual lethal stab wounds that may have been less in number but more in lethality?
There were multiple stab wounds, yes, on them. So, and
Were there, go ahead.
And most of them had just like one that was the lethal stab wound. Yes.
Can you describe what that one might have been?
But they were to, the fatal ones were to the chest area.
We saw them very heavy on the luminol across the street, where some of the neighbors have made some odd statements. That has people thinking, is someone else involved, or did someone else know? The other question people have is why, and why doesn't really matter so much in a criminal case. The state does not have to prove a motive. We may never get one. The other thing is Kaylee having a stalker. It was said that she did, and investigators were adamant that they could not confirm or verify any type of stalker following her, and we now know that that may not be the case. There are 2 other girls here that he could have potentially been stalking, but it was one of the 3, most likely. Ethan wasn't supposed to be there that night. Did he even know Ethan was there? The other thing was the time of death. They kept saying that the homicides occurred between 3 and 4. We now know that they couldn't have happened until after 5 minutes after 4. So that's troubling. And it was over by 4:20, according to the video surveillance of the vehicle leaving. So that's another thing that the defense is probably going to attack. The other thing is the character of this perpetrator. That won't weigh in very heavily. I mean, if he was there and he did this, they're going to have the evidence, and it doesn't matter who he is. But there's so many people saying that they can't believe that he did this. So this trial is going to be extremely interesting when we get there. And whatever evidence comes out is going to be really interesting as well. I look forward to finding out more when the time is right. We're also going to have friends of the suspected, come forward and proclaim, his innocence and try to support that. It's going to be tough at the way things look so far. It's just a really tough timeline. This case really threw me for a loop. That's why it took so long for me to make this video. Let's take a quick listen to some of his friends who are in complete shock and never saw this coming.
I used to go on night runs with him because, I didn't want to go running at night by myself. So I would text him hey, you want to go for a run? We go for 6-7 mile runs at night. So when I saw who it was, I was just in complete shock. I'm still kind of shaking knowing about that. It's just unreal to think somebody could actually do that to somebody. It's absolutely mind-boggling. My adrenaline's still kind of running after finding that information out. So just I feel for the families, and I'm just happy justice can be served now. So.
Looks like a cold-blooded killer. The guy that I went to college with? That dude was nice. He was a nice guy. We studied criminal justice together. He was a really nice guy. And I'm devastated and heartbroken that I knew this guy and that he did this. I'm devastated for those families. I never thought that it would be someone close to home from the Lehigh Valley at Sales University. And here is the biology project and from 2018. We were studying Daphnia and how to, there he is, and he led this project. On the news, looks like a cold-blooded killer.
The tragedies that occurred on November 13th will never be forgotten. And if anyone has any more information, please bring it to Moscow police. And if anyone knows anything about the dog Buddy who was murdered and that case is still pending, please contact the Moscow Police Department. That phone number is 208-883-7180. This was a long video, but it really helped to break it down and spread it out and look at it visually. So I thank you for watching. Stay tuned and be safe.